streaming online? Yes. Channel? Cool. Alright. Hello. To anyone watching, welcome. First time doing this. Excuse the traffic noises in the background. And yeah, today's gonna be soft-spoken ASMR. I should probably have put that in the title, but yeah. Hello. Cool. So today, and I was hoping to make this a series, but I found this antique book about a couple years ago, and I thought I'd read it to you guys. It's a very soft-spoken ASMR and page flipping noises. Don't know if you can hear that, but the cover is like a linen texture. Kind of looks like a checkerboard, but the spine is softer, and the reason why I chose this book is because it is blue. It's very striking amongst all the other books on the shelf. I paid $10 for this, and definitely an antique. Really good condition considering it was published in 1926. 1926, that's really insane. And the cover is a nice bright blue, but obviously faded with time. The front's a little worn, but it's called The Blue Window by Temple Bailey. Oh, you can hear those pages. It's not missing anything, nothing's torn. It's not water damage or anything, but it has that nice faded antique look. Corners are a bit worn, but that's only natural. I'm gonna read her biography first, which was at the back of the book. Temple Bailey, an autobiography. Although my ancestry is all of New England, I was born in the old town of Petersburg, Virginia. I went later to Richmond, and finally at the age of 5 to Washington, D.C., returning to Richmond for a few years in a girls' school, which was picturesquely quartered in General Lee's mansion, now the home of the Virginia Historical Association. I think it was perhaps because of my life in cities that I learned in early years to appreciate the romance of them, the picturesqueness, the charm. It was indeed one reason for my adoration of Dickens that he made London a place for dear delights, finding in crowded squares and quiet streets the human stories. I was not a strong child, and my school life was somewhat intermittent, but my father, in my out-of-school days, supervised my English as carefully as my mother supervised my manners. I had to write themes which my father blue-penciled, and so I came to girlhood and finally to womanhood with a rather easy gift of writing. But I really did not want to write. I was not in the least ambitious for a career. I was tremendously interested in people. I have, in fact, always been always been an intensely social person, liking my kind and clinging somewhat stubbornly to old ideals of democracy and the doctrine that a man's a man for all that. There came, however, a season of stress and sorrow, which drove me to self-expression. I scribbled a story or two and found eventually that editors liked them. A prize came to me from a love story contest in the Ladies' Home Journal, and I was much encouraged. After that, I wrote children's stories, a child's book, love stories, appearing at last in the pages of Harper's Scribner's, the Saturday Evening Post, the Outlook, Collier's, and most of the women's magazines. A series of novels followed. The first was Glory of Youth, then Contrary Mary, Mistress Anne, The Tin Soldier, The Trumpeter Swan, The Gay Cockade, The Dim Lantern, and Peacock Feathers. Many of my books have Washington as a background because I know it best, but whether I range from Boston to Nantucket to Maryland and Chesapeake, or on to the Rockies and the Pacific Coast, I find that while people are modified by environment, they are fundamentally alike, and that the drama of life is as ancient as Genesis and as modern as an airship. So that was her autobiography at the very back of the book. This book is 328 pages long. The text is actually quite large. I can only imagine how much time and effort went into printing these books. So here we go. The Blue Window by Temple Bailey. There's a nice illustration at the very front page. It's of a woman sitting on like a windowsill looking out into a dark night scene. But her image is kind of transparent, so you can still see the rest of the window. And she's just looking out the window. Copyright 1926 by the Penn Publishing Company. Well, I'm sure they won't mind if I read it. Alright. Chapter 1. The Wearing of Black. Hildegard had always known that her mother was different from the others, but she had not known why. She had thought it might be because before her father died, her mother had an easy time, and Aunt Catherine and Aunt Olivia had never had an easy time. They had worked hard as girls on the farm, as they worked hard now. Aunt Olivia, to be sure, had been married, but she had worked hard for her husband, and when he left her a widow, she made her home with Aunt Catherine and just kept on working. At first they had all done women's work, but when the war came on, with labor scarce, the three sisters toiled out of doors, sewing, planting, hoeing, weeding. None of them liked it except Hildegard's mother. She had explained it to Hildegard. When I plant a seed, I feel that it is an act of creation, as if I had painted a picture or had written a poem. And I love the smell of fresh earth with everything bursting into beauty. Hildegard's mother had never talked like that to Aunt Catherine or Aunt Olivia. She had kept such thoughts for her child. Now that she was dead, Hildegard dared not think of things her mother had said to her. They tugged at her heart until she felt it would burst from her breast. It was only not by remembering that she would go on living. It was these thoughts of her mother's which had made her seem so different from the others, and that she was different too because she put on work. She put on gloves when she worked to keep her hands smooth and waved her hair and wore her cheap plain clothes with an air of distinction. Yet these things did not quite explain why her sisters and she were so unlike. Now and then their divergences of ideas would create a crisis, as when the aunts would protest that Hildegard's manners were too fine for her farm. It makes me nervous to have her stand up when I come into a room. None of the other boys and girls do it. I don't want her to be like the other boys and girls, Hildegard's mother had said. Yet in spite of that unexplained finesse, her mother had never shirked the hardest labor. Indeed, it was whispered that hard work had killed her. Hildegard hated that. She knew it was not true. Her mother had said, "Work is the most beautiful thing in the world, my darling. You don't know it yet, but you will come to know it someday, and it holds people from madness." Her mother had said these things with her, usually when they were in their own big room, their two little white beds side by side, a candle by each bed, and a book. Hildegard's mother had always read late into the night. Hildegard would read until 9:30 and then blow out her candle and kiss her mother. And her mother would say, "God bless you, my darling, and keep you safe." It was this blessing which Hildegard missed now, before she went to sleep. It was indeed hard to get to sleep without it, and it was dreadful to have that other little bed empty beside her. Absolutely dreadful. She tried to reach out in the dark into that vague thing, her mother's soul. Love never died, her mother had said. It lived on, and on until eternity. Hildegard had always believed in guardian angels, that they were around her, and the saints, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bless the bed that I lie on. But now there was no one around her, and the angels had fled, and the saints. There was nothing out there in the immeasurable dark. Her mother had been caught on the wave of some vast sea of blackness which had swallowed her up. Hildegard had kept, however, the awfulness of this feeling to herself. If it would have been impossible to talk about with Aunt Catherine and Olivia. They were good-hearted, but uncomprehending. There's one person who might have understood, but he was away at State College. Hildegard had felt that when he heard of her bereavement, he would have come to see her, but he had not come. So she had gone to the cemetery in the carriage with her aunts and come up, back to the house, back to the feast which had been prepared for the relatives and friends who had seen so little of her mother's life, but who had traveled far in order to honor her after death. I'm going to end it here. That was a good test stream, and we'll see you next time. Bye.